Because the machines were being recalibrated this morning.
Schindler's List wasn't just a historical drama. It was a haunting act of emotional exorcism that blurred the line between cinema and reality. What audiences saw as a masterpiece of moral courage was born from chaos, exhaustion, and spiritual collapse. Behind the black and white film stock were tears, trauma, and relentless truth. From real Holocaust survivors reliving memories to Spielberg himself breaking down behind the camera, this film wasn't made, it was endured. Today, we reveal 20 weird and shocking facts about Schindler's List. Number 20, Spielberg tried to avoid directing. Steven Spielberg didn't want to make Schindler's List. He believed he was too emotionally immature and not yet capable of doing justice to the Holocaust. He offered the project to directors like Roman Polanski and Martin Scorsese. Polanski refused because he had survived the Krakow Ghetto as a child. Scorsese returned it, saying Spielberg was the only one who could do it right. For 10 years, the film stayed dormant until Spielberg finally accepted it, not as a career move, but as a moral duty. He later admitted the film terrified him more than anything he had ever done. Number 19, filming left Spielberg emotionally shattered. While filming in Poland, Spielberg found himself overwhelmed daily. The recreated brutality and despair hit too close to reality. He later confessed that he would leave set in tears and call Robin Williams every night just to laugh again. Williams would perform spontaneous comedy routines over the phone, lifting his friend from the darkness. Spielberg said that those nightly calls saved him from emotional collapse. The cast noticed the toll, too. Many scenes left the crew silent for hours. What the camera captured was real grief and moral exhaustion from everyone involved. Spielberg called it therapy, through pain, a wound that had to be reopened to heal. Number 18. Many extras were real, Holocaust survivors. Dozens of extras in Schindler's List were actual Holocaust survivors living in Poland. Some wore costumes identical to the uniforms they had once been forced to wear. Others recognized locations rebuilt exactly as they remembered from childhood. Several broke down during filming, collapsing under the weight of memory. One woman fainted when she walked through a replica of the Krakow ghetto street she once escaped. Spielberg later said those days were unbearable because fiction disappeared and only history remained. Yet the survivors insisted on staying. They wanted the film to remind the world of what had happened, so it would never happen again. Number 17. The girl in the red coat was the only color. Spielberg filmed the entire movie in black and white to make it feel timeless, like the photographs of the era. But he used one jarring splash of color, the little girl in the red coat. Her presence symbolized innocence amid horror. The color was added later in post-production to shock viewers into seeing what the characters ignored. Spielberg said the red represented moral blindness, the world's refusal to act, even when confronted with visible suffering. The girl was real too, based on a child named Roma Lagoka, who survived the Krakow ghetto. That single moment became one of cinema's most haunting images of lost humanity. Number 16. No makeup, no glamour. Only reality. Schindler's List broke every Hollywood rule. Spielberg banned beauty lighting and professional makeup. He wanted faces to look pale, dirty, exhausted, exactly as they would have in the camps. Costumes were reused until they fell apart. Actors wore the same clothes for weeks without washing. Even camera operators dressed in 1940s outfits to blend into the environment. The film used natural light and handheld cameras to keep the look raw and documentary-like. Spielberg said glamour would have destroyed the truth. The result was a movie that didn't feel like acting. It felt like bearing witness. Number 15. Liam Neeson. Wasn't the first choice. Liam Neeson became legendary as Oscar Schindler, but he almost never got the role. Spielberg originally wanted Kevin Costner, then Mel Gibson. Both expressed interest, but Spielberg felt they were too recognizable. He wanted a face the audience could believe was morally uncertain, not a Hollywood hero. Neeson was chosen after Spielberg saw him in a stage play and was struck by his quiet authority. During filming, Neeson stayed in character between takes, keeping Schindler's confident yet haunted energy alive. He often isolated himself from castmates to stay emotionally centered. By the end of production, he said he felt drained and spiritually aged. His performance earned him an Academy Award nomination and turned him from stage actor into global icon. Spielberg later said, "No one else could have carried the film's moral weight with such stillness." Number 14. Ralph Fiennes went too deep into evil. Ralph Fiennes, who played the sadistic Nazi commandant Amon Goeth, delivered one of the most terrifying performances in film history, but playing the role nearly destroyed him. To understand Goeth's psychology, Fiennes studied Nazi documents and survivor testimony until he could barely sleep. He admitted he felt disgusted at how easily he could portray cruelty. Spielberg said watching him on set was chilling because even the extras, some of them survivors, avoided eye contact with him in costume. Between takes, Fiennes tried to lighten the mood with jokes, but no one laughed. When the film ended, he said it took months to shed the darkness. Spielberg called him frighteningly convincing because his stillness carried more terror than violence ever could. Number 13. The film was shot in just 72 days. Despite its epic scale, Schindler's List was shot in only 72 days. Spielberg refused to treat it like a grand Hollywood project. He wanted urgency, realism, and exhaustion to bleed into every frame. The schedule was brutal, with long days and freezing. Temperatures across Poland. The cast worked under constant emotional strain, reenacting scenes that mirrored true history. Spielberg avoided storyboards, preferring handheld spontaneity that captured chaos authentically. He even skipped watching daily footage, saying he didn't want to detach from the human suffering happening before the camera. When filming wrapped, the crew felt as if they had lived through something historic, not just made a movie. Spielberg later said the speed added raw truth because no one had time to fake emotion. Number 12. Poland locals reacted with mixed emotions. Filming in Krakow stirred deep emotions for local residents. Many still remembered the real events that inspired the film. Some wept watching Nazi uniforms return to their streets for the first time in 50 years. Others protested, saying the pain was too recent to relive. During the liquidation scene, crowds gathered silently just outside camera range, some praying, others trembling. Spielberg respected the sensitivity filming with minimal intrusion. After shooting, wrapped, several Polish survivors approached the cast to thank them for preserving truth. Spielberg later called their response the hardest part, because he realized he wasn't just making cinema. He was reopening history's wounds. The experience forever changed how he saw filmmaking. It was no longer storytelling. It was moral testimony. Number 11. Spielberg refused to take a salary. Steven Spielberg declined any personal payment for directing Schindler's List. He called the money blood money. Instead, he donated his entire salary and future profits to the Shoah Foundation, a nonprofit organization he founded to record testimonies of Holocaust survivors. That foundation went on to collect over 50,000 first-hand survivor interviews, the largest archive of its kind. Spielberg said making the film gave him purpose beyond entertainment. It became his way of honoring the people who lived what his camera tried to capture. He later said Schindler's List changed his identity not as a filmmaker, but as a human being. The film made him see cinema as responsibility, not career. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because up next, the final 10 facts reveal how Schindler's List changed world history, including one decision Spielberg swore he'd never repeat. Number 10. Spielberg shot without a script. Some days, there were moments when Spielberg threw away the call sheet and improvised. He wanted the camera to feel like a witness, not a director. The script was sometimes abandoned entirely so that actors could react instinctively to the chaos around them. During the liquidation of the Krakow ghetto, Spielberg let the cameras roll through unscripted panic, allowing extras to scatter and scream naturally. He said he wanted disorder, not choreography. Many scenes were captured in a single take because repeating them felt cruel. Crew members cried behind the lens as real emotion poured out. Number 9. The ending scene wasn't originally planned. The powerful finale showing real survivors visiting Schindler's grave in Jerusalem was not part of the original screenplay. Spielberg decided to film it near the end of production after meeting dozens of survivors who inspired him. He wanted to end not in despair, but in continuation, in proof that Schindler's actions truly saved generations. The scene features both actors and the actual descendants of those rescued. None of them rehearsed. Spielberg simply told them to lay a stone if they felt moved to. That unscripted act turned into one of cinema's most emotional endings. The director said it was his moment of peace, a closing prayer for everyone involved. Number 8. John Williams almost refused to score it. When Spielberg showed composer John Williams the rough cut, Williams was speechless. After several minutes, he said, "You need a better composer than me." Spielberg replied, "I know, but they're all dead." The music that followed became one of the most haunting scores ever written. Williams brought in violinist Itzhak Perlman, whose mournful performance gave the film its aching soul. The recording sessions were emotional, with musicians often breaking down in tears mid-performance. Williams said the music didn't need to move audiences. It needed to make them remember. Every note carried the sorrow of millions and the hope of the few who survived. And number 7. The crew was forbidden to joke on set. Unlike other Spielberg sets filled with laughter, Schindler's List was treated like sacred ground. Joking or lighthearted chatter was banned. Spielberg told his crew they were walking on graves. Everyone dressed in muted clothing and behaved with quiet respect. Before major scenes, actors often stood in silence together, some praying, others staring at the ground. Crew members described the atmosphere as heavy, like a memorial that never ended. There were no celebrations, no applause when scenes wrapped. Spielberg said the only sound he wanted to hear was truth captured on film. It created a tension that made every performance painfully authentic. Number 6. Spielberg refused to watch the film for 25 years. After completing Schindler's List, Spielberg couldn't bring himself to watch it again. The emotional toll was too severe. He said the film was not entertainment. It was a scar. For 25 years, he avoided screenings, saying it reopened wounds he had barely survived making. When he finally watched it decades later with his children, he wept the same way he did in 1993. He said it was the most important film of his life, but also the most unbearable. For Spielberg, Schindler's List wasn't an achievement. It was a burden of memory, a story he carried forever. Number 5. Spielberg filmed. In real Holocaust locations, Schindler's List wasn't filmed on studio sets. Spielberg insisted on shooting in real locations across Poland, including near the remains of actual concentration camps. When he tried to get permission to film inside, Auschwitz authorities refused, saying it was sacred ground. So he built an exact replica just outside the camp walls brick by brick. Survivors who visited the set said it looked horrifyingly accurate. Local residents broke down when they saw German uniforms marching again through Krakow streets. Spielberg kept the production quiet, avoiding publicity out of respect. He later said every day of filming felt like trespassing on history. That authenticity gave the film its power. You could feel the ghosts in every frame. Crew members claimed strange silences and chills followed them throughout production, as if the past was watching. Number 4. Oskar Schindler's real factory still exists. The actual enamelware factory Oskar Schindler used to save Jewish workers still stands in Krakow. Spielberg visited it before filming and was struck by how eerily preserved it felt. The director said walking through those halls gave him chills because he could almost hear the echoes of machines and whispers of survival. The factory was later converted into a museum dedicated to Schindler and his workers. Some scenes were shot there to honor its legacy, but most were recreated nearby to preserve the original structure. Crew members described filming inside as deeply emotional. Many extras placed their hands on the walls and cried. Spielberg said that building wasn't just a location. It was proof that humanity survived inside a machine built for death. Number 3. The cast experienced emotional breakdown. By the end of production, several cast members suffered emotional exhaustion. Ben Kingsley, who played Itzhak Stern, described the experience as spiritual trauma, saying he carried the sadness home every night. Extras who portrayed victims fainted during mass shooting scenes, even though they knew it was fiction. Some couldn't return for the next day's work. Spielberg arranged private counselors on set to help those struggling to separate performance from memory. He too relied on emotional support from his wife and Robin Williams just to endure each day. Crew members said there was a shared sense of grief that bound everyone together. When the shoot finally ended, people hugged silently, unable to celebrate. The atmosphere was not triumph, but mourning, a feeling that the story had changed them forever. Number 2. The film changed Spielberg's faith. Before making Schindler's List, Spielberg identified as culturally Jewish, but not deeply religious. By the end of production, that changed. The film reconnected him with his heritage in ways he never expected. Visiting synagogues and speaking with survivors reshaped his understanding of faith and responsibility. After the movie, he began attending Jewish ceremonies regularly and founded the Shoah Foundation to preserve survivor testimonies. He said directing the film reminded him that his identity wasn't just cultural, it was spiritual. The project became a personal awakening that turned grief into purpose. Spielberg called Schindler's List his rebirth as both artist and Jew, saying it wasn't a film about death, but about rediscovering what life means after tragedy. Number 1. It made world leaders cry. When Schindler's List premiered, world leaders wept openly. Bill Clinton paused the film during a private White House screening because he couldn't continue without collecting himself. In Germany, it became mandatory viewing for high school students. Holocaust museums reported record attendance in the months that followed. Survivors sent Spielberg thousands of letters, thanking him for telling their story with dignity. The film won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, but Spielberg said no trophy could equal a survivor's embrace. It wasn't a victory, he said it was remembrance. Schindler's List didn't just change cinema, it changed how the world remembered genocide forever. Bonus fact: the survivors, appearing in the final scene, were real. The emotional closing sequence showing people placing stones on Schindler's grave wasn't staged with actors. Those were real Holocaust survivors and their descendants, people saved by Schindler himself. Spielberg invited them privately to Israel and filmed them as they arrived without direction. The tears were real, the silence sacred. When the scene ended, the survivors gathered around Spielberg and thanked him for giving them something they never expected: closure. The director later said, that moment was not cinema, it was communion. Decades later, he called it the single most important image of his career because it proved that one man's decency had outlived an empire built on hate. Schindler's List remains more than a film. It is a living testimony. It reminds us that courage can bloom in horror and that truth must never fade to silence. If you were moved by these hidden stories, go ahead and like and subscribe, because the next film we uncover might just reveal another secret history waiting to be told.